Hello guys, my name is Steven Odongo. Today I'm going to take you through cathode rays and cathode ray tube. So, key definition of cathode rays. What is a cathode ray? Cathode ray can be defined in two ways. One, by saying that cathode rays are negatively charged electrons emitted from a cathode in a cathode ray tube. Or you can simply say that these are a stream of negatively charged fast-moving electrons. So, a cathode ray can only be produced in cathode ray tube. How is that possible? So a metal must be strongly heated, and then you have the electrons from its surface, and this occurs at high temperatures. That's what provides heat. So electrons gain sufficient kinetic energy to break loose from a strong nuclear force. Nuclear force is a force that attracts the structure of a metal surface. So when it is heated, then it tends to break the strong nuclear force, and then you'll have now electrons being ejected or electrons being emitted from being released from its surface, mean the surface of the metal. So thermionic emission. So what is this thermionic emission? Thermionic emission can simply be defined the process as to which the electrons are ejected from a heated metal surface. So that is what is called thermionic emission. So it is this process that electrons are being released. So let us look at how cathode rays are produced. So what do you need to produce cathode rays, or where are they produced? So cathode rays are produced in a cathode ray tube. So the key components of the cathode ray tube you need to know, and without them then you cannot have cathode rays travel from cathode to anode. So one component is long evacuated tube. So long evacuated tube prevents the cathode rays, the electrons produced in the cathode ray tube, from ionizing with the air. And then you have metal filament. So metal filaments simply provide heat to the cathode. So equal distribution of heat is made possible by metal filament. And then we have the anode at one end, and the other end we have cathode. So the diagram below simply show the cathode ray tube. So you'll see it down below here, and the key components. So cathode ray is connected to the negative terminal, very important, of a high voltage source, whereas anode is connected to a positive terminal. So how can you define cathode? Cathode can simply be defined by saying that it is a negative electrode, whereas anode can be defined by saying that it is a positive electrode. So we've talked about thermionic emission. So thermionic emission also happens in the cathode ray tube. Why? This simply because the electrons are being ejected from the cathode and they're being ejected from the cathode. So when the cathode is heated, then electrons are produced. So that process is called thermionic emission, but we've defined it earlier. Okay, so this diagram here is the structure of the cathode ray tube. So let us look at the components. We have high voltage, we have heater filament, we have cathode, we have discharge tube, we have vacuum, and then we have cathode. So what is the function of each component? So high voltage here supplies heat to the cathode. So once it supplies heat to the cathode, of which cathode is made up of material of high melting point, for example tungsten, and we have metal filament which also supplies heat to the cathode. Then we have discharge tube which is highly evacuated, that prevents the electrons ionizing with the air molecules. Then we have vacuum that provide free space. Then we have anode. So how is it possible to have these electrons transfer from cathode to anode? So what makes it possible to move from anode to cathode is because of high potential difference between cathode and anode. There is high potential difference here that makes the acceleration of electrons towards the anode. So that's what you need to know about cathode ray tube. Then what are key things to note? So one is that the tube is highly evacuated to prevent electrons from colliding with air molecules. High evacuation to prevent it from colliding with the air molecules, which reduce kinetic energy. Then two, the cathode is usually coated with barium and strontium oxide to give abundant supply of electrons. So you can be asked to explain why the cathode is usually coated with barium and strontium oxides. Is simply to give abundant supply of electrons. So the oxides have law, work, function. That's why they are used. 3. Thermionic emission is the process through which free electrons are emitted from the surface of the metal when the metal is heated. So the metal must be heated for you to have free electrons emitted from it. And metal surface also must be heated. So the process of ejection of electrons from a heated metal surface is known as thermionic emission. And don't also forget to know the definition of cathode rays and to know the basic structure of cathode ray tube and how it functions. I mean this cathode ray tube, and also know where the cathode rays are being produced. See you next time, guys, in lesson 2.